Hi everybody, Joe Konkoly in the shop today on Facebook Live. A few weeks ago we had an opportunity to take a look at some as-is instruments we have here for sale at Elderly Instruments, and one of them, actually it was this banjo, needed what we described as a heat press. So today, and we've got a couple of requests from folks to explore that idea a little bit further. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is the heat press. And basically what that is a way to heat up a neck and apply pressure to it so you can move the neck into a configuration that you want to. And there's a number of ways to go about that, but and a number of reasons why you might need to do that. For instance, this banjo has quite a bit of bow in this direction, like this. Forward bow, we call it. It's from the pull of the strings pulling on it. And most instruments need a little bit of that bow, or relief as we call it. This has too much relief. The strings have exerted too much tension on the neck. The neck is not held up to that tension, and it's curved up like this. Another reason why you might need to do it is the opposite. Some instruments take on a back bow from not having enough string tension on them over time, or there can be a number of other reasons why that might happen. Because the string tension pulls the neck up like this, a lot of times when you build the neck, you build in for that pull on the neck. You might build the neck with some slight back bow like that, so the string tension will pull it up to straight with very little relief. But a lot of times the string tension over a number of years will pull that neck into an up bow. Sometimes you might find a combination of those things happening on one neck, where you have too much relief right here, but a hump right here in the neck. So the neck might have a bit of an S-curve where it goes up and back down and up again. And that could be a little bit more problematic to take the heat press and do that and take care of that problem. But the main idea with the heat press is you're going to heat the neck up from the top of the neck, which is the fingerboard surface, which on most instruments is unfinished. So you don't have to worry about heating the finish up too much and getting it soft or bubbling it or any problems like that, because the fingerboard is unfinished. That heat then penetrates the fingerboard to the glue joint just below it. And that heat can penetrate through the fingerboard, soften that glue joint just enough so that when you clamp it into a different position, that glue will be warm and soft, and then you leave it clamped in that position for quite a while, usually 24 hours overnight, a minimum of 4 hours, to let the glue cool and allow it to harden up in a different position, and then hopefully it will stay in that position. One of the challenges with a heat press is how long is it going to last? That's usually the big question. Because if the neck is pulled up from string tension, you can reshape that neck or change the shape of the neck with the heat press, but if you don't do anything to strengthen the neck, chances are that same string tension is going to eventually pull the neck right back into the same problem. So that is one of the concerns with the heat press. There are a number of situations where it will work really well. For instance, if you have an instrument with a back bow and you heat press a little bit of relief into that, the string tension is going to help that to stay in position. That's a situation where you can expect it to last a long time. But so we have a couple of examples here, and I also have a couple of examples of different tools that are part of the heat press. Let's take a look at that. This is a heat press that we made here. It's basically a square steel tubing with a heating element mounted inside, and the plug here. And this is the Robotemp stepless heat control that we purchased to vary the heat in that element. And of course, it plugs in with this really nifty plug here into the heating element. That plugs into a standard outlet, and I can then use this dial to dial in the right amount of heat. So that is a basic heat element. A nice stiff material so that it will accept that heat and allow that heat to emanate through the neck, but not, but also just be a nice, really stiff, straight piece. So let's take a look at this banjo here and how we might go about preparing this for the heat press. The first thing I did was I took a straight edge, set it on top of the neck, so I can measure how much relief there is in here, at least to a reasonable point, so that I can get a feel for how much I need to change this. So at the 7th fret, which is kind of right in the middle there, I'm using this auto feeler gauge and this straight edge, which is resting on the 1st and last frets, and I had to use a couple of them here. 25 thousandths and 24 thousandths, so 49. It's around 50 thousandths worth of relief right there. So what I did was look through my scrap wood, find a piece of scrap wood here that is around 50 thousandths thick. So I can use this. I can take and place this in the middle there, and when I put my heat press on here, I can clamp the ends of it, and clamp the ends of it, and that will bring the neck, it will bend the neck back like that, approximately that 50 thousandths that I know that there's relief in there. The whole heat press process is a educated guess. How much heat, for how long, and clamped into position, and how big of a shim you put in there to get it to come out to what you want. So usually, it's not unusual to have to do this process several times to get exactly what you want. But, all right, so we've measured that. Let's take the string tension off here. And get the strings out of the way and prepare this neck to be clamped in there.
Yeah, so I'll search around and see what I can dig up and separate Okay. Yeah, probably not, but I'll try to find the right
Does this have the adjustable?
Okay. No problem.
Okay. Let's see. Set the bridge aside and get these babies. We should be able to, for demonstration purposes here, I'm just going to move them out of the way. Normally I would take it completely off. I have another, just a piece of maple here that is a similar size to the heat press thing. You can see there are some fret marks, and those brown ones are for heating it. What this does, I put this in between the heat press and the neck to make that heat go in there nice and slow. So, and if I had, this has wooden binding on the edge, which is nice. If I had a neck with plastic binding, I would be trying to protect the heat from that plastic binding. This has a lot of fancy inlays in it. So if I overheat the neck, the glue that is used to heat those inlays will soften and move, and I'll have some inlays to re-glue too. But basically, I'm going to put that, and then I'm going to take my 50 thousandths piece of scrap there, hold it in place with a piece of tape. So that is right in the middle of the neck where I want that. Actually, that is the opposite. I don't want it to be there. I want it to be here. So I want to bow this back. Actually, I'm looking for two pieces. Snap that in half. I'm looking for one piece on either end because I want to press these end down and bring the middle up. That's exactly what I want to do. All right. So I'll set those there, this on there, and this on here. Actually, I'm going to move it so the plug is up at that other end. And then I'm going to clamp this situation up here with, excuse me, Juan, I have to grab my clamps here. We have a couple of clamps that came with our other heat press, which is over here, already being used on a base here, Gibson Firebird base. This is a unit that came with the shop. It was here when I got here. It's made by the Aria company, which you might recognize from their instruments, that brand name from their instruments. But it has two of these clamps U-shaped piece which is going to hold the neck, and this clamp up here. Stretch already has this one going. It has a similar problem. The truss rod was very close to being maxed out, and there's still a fair amount of up bow in the neck. So what he did is clamp this up with, I don't know if you can get over here, Juan, and see this. He's got his shim right there. That's quite a bit more than mine. It's a pretty big stiff piece of, or a pretty thick piece, but he's got it back bowed with the middle of the neck pulled up. But let's see if I can get this guy connected up here. Slip that in there. And then on top of there. So, actually, I keep doing the reverse here. I need the clamp right here in the middle. This works out good because I only really need one clamp. I'm going to move this around a little bit. Move my shims so that is mainly there right at the first fret. And then I can get this right in here in that 7th fret area. Make sure everything's in place. And all I got to do is push down on this a little bit. So at first, all I'm doing is getting a little bit of tension on there. The banjo neck is flexible enough that I could crank that right up to flat there. But then what I would do is plug this baby in and start the heating process very slowly. Normally what I would do is get my phone out, get my timer going, and stopwatch so that I could heat this up at low heat for about 15 minutes, and very slowly through that 15 minutes turn this crank and start bringing that neck up very slowly all the way to its flush with the heating element. And then I would turn it off and let it cool down completely for a good hour. But during that 15 minutes, what I'm trying to do, I would be trying to feel the back of the neck. I'm trying to feel that heat penetrate through that fingerboard joint, and not all the way to the back of the neck, but I don't want it to get so hot that it's hot to the touch. If the back of the neck is hot to the touch, I know the finish could be compromised a little bit, but that's what I would do, is heat it up for 15 minutes slowly, and at the end of that 15 minutes I would have this nice and tight so that the middle of the neck is pulled right up there to the middle of that, and the 50,000 shims that I've got in here are in full use. And I would let it cool down, and I would do that whole same process again after it cooled down. Heating it up slowly and under that clamping pressure a couple of times till I could feel the back of the neck and feel some heat penetrate through there, but not so hot that it would be hot to my touch and compromise the finish. Then I would turn it off and I would let it cool overnight. That's the process that Stretch has already started here. He's got it clamped up. He's already heated it up twice, and now it is sitting here waiting. It's going to sit like this overnight, and tomorrow he'll unclamp it, take a view of the neck, measure it, see how much it has moved, and if it's where he really needs it to be, then he can put the string tension on and see what his result is. And at that point, if you, with string tension on, if you've moved the neck where you need it to be, then you can go back in and take a look at the frets themselves. Another aspect of this heating process is, of course, you are using the metal frets themselves to help transfer the heat. The metal frets are going to heat up a little faster. They're going to take that heat and allow it to penetrate through the fingerboard. But that heating and cooling of the fretted area too can loosen those frets. The seating of the frets, and you have to, once you have the neck where you want it to be, you have to go in and then check the frets and make sure the frets are all still seated as they need to be and that they are level. So that is another part of the process that usually comes with the heat press. It's both the heat press and a fret level after the fact. And like I said, it's not unusual to have to fine-tune this process with several attempts to get it where you need to be. A banjo is a pretty good situation where there's just not as much string tension as you might find on a dreadnought flat top where you're going to have medium strings on it, so that it will probably last quite a while. If a heat press can also be part of another process, like another way that you can straighten out a neck, especially a neck that does not have a truss rod like you have on a banjo, is to refret it. We've talked about that before, a compression refret. And so a heat press can be in combination with a compression refret. It can be part of that process where you are manipulating the neck where you want it to be, and they're going to use that refret to keep it in place. With this base, Stretch has the truss rod to work with. The truss rod is completely loose right now, so he's manipulating the neck where he wants it to be, and then he's going to reinforce that move that he's made on the neck with that truss rod in an attempt to get it to stay there for as long as possible. Nothing's forever. It's certainly not a heat press. But back in the day, before we had these items, I might resort to a different heat source, where you would get this situation clamped up, but you wouldn't have this big bar in the middle, and would use a heat lamp or other source to heat it up, and then do the same clamping situation. So you don't need one of these to do a heat press. All you need is some sort of a heat source, but you have to be very judicious with your heat, and it's not the kind of thing you want to jump in on your pre-war D28 right off the bat, or your any valuable guitar. So if you're experimenting with learning how to do the heat press, you got to start on something that can take it if you make a mistake. What kind of mistakes could you make? Too much heat can be a problem. Finish can melt, plastic can melt. You also have to be observant. As I said, heat can slowly up for 15 minutes, then walk away. That's why I would have my phone with my stopwatch or my alarm going to make sure I would not walk away during that 15 minutes and stay observant and see what's going on. So it's a delicate procedure. Once you get it all clamped up and cooled down, then you're good to go. You just have to wait. But that's it basically right there, the heat press. If you have any questions, fire away. We'll get them answered in the next couple of weeks before we do our next Facebook Live. And we welcome any suggestions or thoughts you have about new things that you'd like to see here in the shop. In the meantime, take care, like us, share us on Facebook, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. So long.